New York State has a lot of government. We have villages, cities, towns, counties, town justices. It's a system built in the 1800s when upstate New York was much more heavily populated than it is today. Today, there are far fewer people, and many of those people are older. This all means there are fewer people running as candidates to fill all those offices of government. In fact, in at least a dozen cases in Lewis County, no one's on the ballot. That's today's story of the day.
Support for Story of the Day comes from Long Run Wealth, an SEC-registered investment advisor in Lake Placid, providing comprehensive wealth management, retirement, and financial planning solutions. LongRunWealth.com.
Hey, I'm David Sommerstein. It's Wednesday, August 9th. First up, U.S. Customs and Border Protection is planning to build a new facility in the Thousand Islands to replace its old one on Wellesley Island. They've been considering a site in Clayton known as Blind Bay, which has drawn the opposition of environmentalists and local residents. But as Lucy Grindon reports, the CPB will now consider other sites as well.
Congresswoman Claudia Tenney announced today that Customs and Border Protection has started looking at other possible building sites besides Blind Bay. CBP wants a new, larger facility to accommodate more agents. They also want space for a detention center, working dogs, and boats. So one advantage of Blind Bay is its water access. But some area residents and green group Save the River have been trying to stop CBP from building there. They say Blind Bay is a pristine natural environment and a crucial breeding ground for the muskie, a popular sport fish. Tenney and Senators Chuck Schumer and Kirsten Gillibrand have also voiced opposition to the Blind Bay site. Tenney's statement says she's been bringing community concerns to her meetings with CBP officials. She said, quote, "We have made it extraordinarily clear that the North Country does not want this station constructed in Blind Bay." Now, Tenney says CBP is considering other locations. The agency has also promised to be more transparent as the Wellesley Island relocation process continues. Lucy Grindon, North Country Public Radio.
New York Senator Chuck Schumer was at a Plattsburgh hospital yesterday to promote a bill that aims to tackle the fentanyl crisis at its source. Champlain Valley reporter Kara Chapman reports.
Speaking in the Champlain Valley Physicians Hospital boardroom, Senator Chuck Schumer said Clinton County has seen firsthand the devastation fentanyl can have on a community. He said local law enforcement have seized 2,500 bags of the powerful drug this year.
In the past 2 years, Clinton County has seen 29 deaths from opioid overdoses. For a county like this, that's a heck of a lot.
According to the CDC, more than 2/3 of overdose deaths in 2022 involve synthetic opioids like fentanyl. Schumer says it's been hard to address fentanyl because it's relatively cheap and easy to make, is prevalent in other drugs, and comes from overseas.
Chinese companies, with the Chinese government just looking the other way and winking, sends the precursor chemicals that are made into fentanyl. They send them to Mexico. Mexico then, in its labs, these drug dealers and others, changes it into fentanyl and sends it across the border.
Schumer says the Senate has added a bill to the National Defense Authorization Act to try to tackle the problem by going after China and Mexico. The Fend Off Fentanyl Act would declare international fentanyl trafficking a national emergency. Schumer says it would also give President Joe Biden emergency powers to put sanctions on China and even Mexico if they don't help stop the flow of fentanyl. He says passage of the bill was broadly bipartisan, so it has a good chance of becoming law. But now it's up to the Republican-led House to take it up.
If the House heeds the call, we will fight this horrible crisis with the toughest thing we can do to a foreign country economically, which is tough economic sanctions.
Crystal Brandt says she doesn't think the government is doing enough to address addiction. She's a recovery coach with Champlain Valley Family Center who works at the hospital and one of the people who flanked Schumer during his remarks. Brandt says a big issue in this area is the lack of available beds for people in crisis.
To a person who's in a mental health crisis or an addiction crisis, and they want help right now and they can't get it, they go back out and, they're most likely probably not going to come back in to ask for help again because of getting that no answer.
Brandt, who's been in recovery from addiction for more than 3 years, says there should be more conversations about addiction in government circles. She also says the focus for addressing fentanyl should be on the southern border, where much of it gets into the U.S.
I think they're doing a good job. I think it could be more prevalent, though, because fentanyl's killing the young generation.
Schumer says the NDAA, and thus the Fend-Off Fentanyl Act, need to be passed by the end of the year. Kara Chapman, North Country Public Radio, Plattsburgh.
New York's other senator was in the North Country, too, yesterday. U.S. Senator Kirsten Gillibrand announced in Lowville that she's sponsoring new legislation that would put $50 billion towards rural economic development. Gillibrand says the bill would create the Rural Future Partnership Fund and would focus funds towards infrastructure, schools, hospitals, and small businesses. The grants would help fund long-term economic development projects with money awarded over the course of 5 years. Gillibrand says the bill also seeks to fight population loss by sending AmeriCorps volunteers to rural areas for services like childcare, health, and education. This November, a dozen elected positions in Lewis County will have zero candidates running to fill them. That includes 3 town supervisor positions and 4 town clerk positions. Lucy Grindon is back for a double dose for this report.
Francis Yurden is the town supervisor of Osceola in the southern Tug Hill Plateau. Population 243. Yurden is 81 years old. He's been retired for 20 years, but he still volunteers as a firefighter, and he's been Osceola's town supervisor for a combined total of 10 years. First, he did the job for 6 years. Then he stopped. But 4 years later, he says Osceola needed him to take on the job again.
Because they couldn't get anybody to run. Nobody would get on the ballot. They kind of volunteered me. They recruited me back in.
This year, the town has the same problem. No one on the ballot for town supervisor. Yurden says there is someone planning to run as a write-in candidate. And only 2 people in Osceola are running for the 2 open positions on the town planning board.
Yeah, the only contested position in our town is the town clerk.
Yurden says working for the town is time-consuming.
You got to do the payroll. You got to do all the bills. You got to do the agenda for the town board meeting, run the town board meetings, and everything in between. You know, you're constantly getting phone calls. You got to make yourself available.
He says the town supervisor job takes him about 10 hours a week, and it pays just $8,000 a year, about minimum wage.
People just want to sit back. They don't want to step up and take responsibility. They want somebody else to do it.
This is becoming a problem across the North Country. In addition to the 3 supervisor jobs and 4 clerk jobs in Lewis County, there are also positions like village trustee, town council, tax collector, all without candidates. There are also empty spots on the ballots in Jefferson and St. Lawrence counties. That means a write-in candidate could easily win one of those positions with a very small number of votes. And if no write-in candidate wins, then the County Board of Elections has to get involved. Ann Nortz is the commissioner in Lewis County.
If there is no clear candidate that wins for any elected office, our office would certify to that township as a failure to elect. At that time, the town would take it, and they may wish to appoint until the next general election.
There are a lot of possible reasons why people aren't stepping up to run for local government positions in the North Country. A dwindling population, an aging population, and the general nationwide decline in civic engagement. Public trust in government has decreased by about 50% since Yurden was a young man in the 60s, according to the Pew Research Center. Yurden says he thinks the lack of candidates has to do with economics.
Usually the husband and wife are both working because they have to survive. If you're doing that, you don't really want to spend much time working for the town or helping the town or doing something for the town. I think it's just the overall expense of living. Your gas prices, your taxes, everything overall, it's putting a way bigger burden on the families.
Yurden says he personally needs a break.
I want some time to myself. I'm 82 this fall. I want to do some other stuff. Jeez,
After Yurden leaves his post, he'll keep volunteering with the local Redfield Fire Department, which he says also needs more people. Lucy Grindon, North Country Public Radio.
We have more news all the time on our website, ncpr.org. Music today by Ben Sharon of Watertown and Caretaker of Canton. I'm David Summerstein, North Country Public Radio.